everyone. Miss Carol here on Faith Boulevard in the museum. I hope you're having a great week, and I hope school is going well for you. I know it's confusing and it's not what you're used to, but you know, life is just that way sometimes, right? So we just have to kind of go with the flow a little bit and make it work. But I'm sure it'll be a good year for you. We just have to pray about it a lot, right? All right, and glad you joined us this morning. Last week, remember what happened? Moses broke those tablets, didn't he? That God had carved himself and written on. So God tells Moses, carve them again, and I will write on them, but you have to carve them. So Moses does that, doesn't he? Before he does that, though, God was ready to destroy the Israelites, Aaron, all of them for their wickedness in making that idol. Moses prayed and prayed for them, and God said, okay, because I love you, I'm going to do what you said. I'm not going to destroy them. Because he just wanted to make a nation from Moses, didn't he? Start all over again. Moses said, I don't want that. So God forgave them. Moses goes back up on the mountain after he carves the stones out, and God again writes the 10 Commandments front and back on those stones. But Moses is up there another 40 days and 40 nights, isn't he? And while he's up there, God isn't just talking to him about the 10 Commandments. God's talking to him about all of the law that he wants the Israelites to follow. And he's talking to them about plans like blueprints. Do you know what a blueprint is? When someone wants to build a home or an office building or whatever, they have to have an architect who comes in and builds plans so they know what this room is for and how big this room is. And so God is giving Moses plans for a special place that he said is going to be the place of worship. And it's going to be where I'm going to be among my people. And so Moses also comes down with those plans that God drew up for him. Well, he drew them, but God told him exactly how he wanted it to be done. But if you remember, when Moses came down from that mountain, something was different about him, wasn't it? His face was shining, glowing like the sun. People, they were afraid of him, weren't they? And why was that? Why was it glowing like that? Because he'd been with God. Because he had been in the presence of God. And so he put a veil over his face, didn't he? Whenever he was with the people, so that he wouldn't frighten them, this veil went down over his face. But when he would go and talk with God, he would take the veil off. So Moses comes down from the mountain. Now, we're going to talk a little bit now about what God told him up on that mountain. And it says, the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from each man whose heart tells him to give. And these are the offerings you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and the hides of sea cows. And we're not sure exactly what a sea cow is, but a lot of historians think maybe it was like a manatee. If you've ever been to Florida, you may have seen a manatee swimming around. It may have been like a manatee, but we're not exactly sure. And a lot of acacia wood. We need olive oil, spices, and fragrant incense, and gems and stones. And have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle, that's what God's calling it, and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. So God is asking for the Israelites to bring these things to him. Now, that's a lot of stuff, and where do you think they got all that? Once again, most of it would have come from their Egyptian masters and friends and whoever gave them all of that, right? So God had a plan for that. I told you he had a plan. And so that's what they were using. Now we're going to go over to Exodus 35. We're going to start with verse 1 through 10. And it says, Moses assembled the whole Israelite community and said to them, "These are the things the Lord has commanded you to do. For 6 days work is to be done, but the seventh day shall be your holy day, a Sabbath day of rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work on it must be put to death." And God's serious about that resting on that day, isn't he? "Do not light a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. All your cooking, anything has to be done the day before." And then Moses said to the whole Israelite community, "This is what the Lord has commanded. From what you have, take an offering for the Lord. Everyone who is willing is to bring the Lord an offering." And then he goes through everything again. Gold, silver, bronze, blue and purple and scarlet yarn and fine linen and the hides of the sea cows and the ram skins dyed red and the goat hair, the wood, the olive oil, the fragrant incense, and all the expensive stones and gems. "And all who are skilled among you are to come and make everything the Lord has commanded." And then he proceeds to tell them exactly what they are needed to make. And so we're going to go over to verse 20. "Then the whole Israelite community left Moses' presence, and everyone who was willing and whose heart told him to do that came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work on the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle, for all its service and for the sacred garments. All who were willing, men and women alike, came, and they brought gold, jewelry. I'm going to just show you, and there were just so much. All right, so they brought gold jewelry. They brought their pins, their brooches, their earrings, their rings, their ornaments. They all presented their gold as an offering to the Lord. And anyone who had blue, purple, or scarlet yarn, or fine linen, or goat hair, or ram skins, the sea cow's hides, those presented an offering of silver or bronze, brought it to the Lord. And everyone brought their work. Every skilled woman who could spin the wool with her hands brought it, and blue, purple, scarlet linen. All the women who were willing spun the goat hair, and the leaders brought in the stones and other gems, and they brought their olive oil. And all the Israelite men and women who were willing brought everything that the Lord through Moses had commanded them to do. All right, so these people who just 6 weeks earlier had built that idol realize now their mistake, don't they? And now they want to please God. And so now they're willing to bring all those things that the Egyptians gave them, and they're giving it back to God. I told you, God had a purpose for all those things being given to them. And it wasn't to make the Israelite people rich. It was so they could build this holy place for God. So he had a reason for them bringing all of that to him. All right, and then we're going to read one more little bit in chapter 36, because this is very interesting to me. And so there were two men that God had given a special talent to be able to do all of this work that he needed to do. And I'm not going to pronounce his name right, I'm sure, but Bezalel and Oholiab, and every skilled person to whom the Lord gave a talent or ability to know how to carry out all that work of constructing the tabernacle did just as the Lord commanded. And so they received from Moses all the offerings the Israelites had brought to carry out the work. And the people continued to bring their offerings morning after morning. So they didn't just bring it once. I mean, every day they're coming and giving more and more and more things for that tabernacle. And so all the skilled craftsmen who were doing all the work on the tabernacle left their work and said to Moses, "The people are bringing more than enough for doing the work the Lord commanded to be done." In other words, whoa, they got to stop. We've got more than we need. Don't bring any more. So Moses gave an order, and they sent this word throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. And so the people were kept from bringing more, because what they had already was more than enough to do the work. Now, that is a changed people right now, isn't it? Now they're wanting to please God. They're wanting to do exactly what God told them to do. All right, so now I'm going to attempt to show you as much as I can in pictures of what that tabernacle, and we don't know for sure. I mean, we have, a lot that the Bible tells us what it looked like, but we've never seen it in person, have we? So a lot of it is what people just in their mind, this is how they pictured that it would look. So there's going to be 3 parts to this tabernacle if you look at it that way. And a tabernacle is it's just a tent that's portable, because the people were traveling through the wilderness. They weren't setting up towns and cities anywhere. They were just moving from place to place. Where were they going? To the promised land. Where is it? They don't know, but they're following that cloud, right? The pillar of cloud and fire. So the first thing they're to do is to build a courtyard. In other words, there's going to be a fence, you might say, around this tent, this tabernacle. And so that was where they needed a lot of the linen and the scarlet, which is red, scarlet and blue and purple thread that they wove together to make this cloth fence, you could say. The only way to get in was right here, but the people were not allowed in, just the priests. And in this courtyard, there were 2 pieces of, you could say, furniture, I guess. One is the altar, and it was wood, but it was overlaid with bronze, and that was for the sacrifices. And then there was a basin, and in that was the water that the priests would need to wash their hands after they had offered those sacrifices. So if you were maybe standing outside looking at that fence, you could probably see the very tippy top maybe of the tabernacle tent part. But this would have been the entrance, and you would not have been allowed inside. You would have brought your offerings there. But if you were a priest and you got to go inside that fence, this is probably what you would have seen. So remember, this is the altar for the sacrifices they were to bring to God. This would be the basin where they would have washed their hands. They had to wash their hands. They could not enter the holy place, which is what the tabernacle is called. They could not enter there unless their hands were washed and clean. All right, so we're just going to keep moving along and see what we can find in here. Now, I think this is pretty cool, because if you notice here, that pillar of cloud, whenever they stopped, it's going to be over that tabernacle. That shows them God's presence, doesn't it? And they're following that cloud. But imagine at night. What do you think that would have looked like at night? I think that's a pretty cool picture, don't you? Wow, look at that. And so they could see God's presence there at night. All right, so I'm just going to keep on going until I can explain a little bit to you. Okay, so this would have been the entrance. Okay, so there you've got your red, your blue, your purple linen, and in it was cherubim, which are like angels that they wove in there as well. And there were several coverings to that top of the tabernacle, and we're going to talk a little bit about those. The first one would have been the linen curtain that covered it, and it would have been beautiful just like the other curtains. Over that linen curtain would have been goat's hair, which would have been white, okay, because remember, the people had to bring that. Over the goat's hair would have been the ram skins that were dyed red, and over that would have been the hides of the sea cows or the manatee or whatever. Now, they lived in the sea, obviously, so if you used hides from a sea mammal, for instance, it would be waterproof, wouldn't it? And so with all of these coverings, this would be the one that protected that temple, that tabernacle, from the weather and anything that might have happened. And later on, we're going to talk about that God was already thinking thousands of years ahead. He was already thinking that he was going to send his son. And so he's already making things that happen here be just like what is going to happen when Jesus came. And so we're going to talk about how each of these really can represent Jesus and our lives. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So you see here in the courtyard, here's the tents of the Israelites all around, and only the priests are in the courtyard. There is the basin with the water. And let's just keep moving along here. All right, so I showed you a little bit about the different coverings, and that would be the ram skins dyed red. I hope you can see that. And this would be the goat hair, but to me, I think that it probably was white. Now, going inside, the holy place and the most holy place had wood for the walls, the wood panels, and they were overlaid. In other words, gold was poured over that wood. And so it just looked like gold, solid gold walls. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine? So let's just walk inside. Shall we look inside the tabernacle? We're not priests, right? But we're going to take a look inside there. So now, if you were not a priest back then, and you walked into the courtyard or tried to get into the tabernacle, you would die instantly, all right? That's how important it was that only the priest went in. We would enter through this entrance. And inside that holy place, we're going to see, we're going to forget about that one. These are the two things that were in the courtyard. Remember, that's the altar, and this is the basin with the water. As we enter into the tabernacle itself, there are going to be three objects in there, furnishings. This would have been the lamp. Now that lamp had to stay lit all the time, day and night. And it wasn't candles, so you couldn't say it really was a candle stand, because they weren't candles. They didn't use wax. They were burning olive oil. Remember, the people had to bring olive oil? This is why. And there were 9 stands there, 9 places to burn. So all 9 of those would burn, and they were intricately made and with gold. And then over here we have the table, and it could be called different things, the table of the presence, the table of the showbread. But on this table were kept constantly 12 loaves of bread. But they're the kind of bread we talked about at Passover. No yeast in them. They weren't fluffy bread. They were flat bread. And 12 of them. 12. Why would that matter? Oh, let's go think. How many sons of Jacob? Oh yeah, 12. That represented the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes, okay? 12 loaves of bread. And then, up against a curtain, we're going to look at that in a minute, that separated this from the most holy place would be where the altar of incense was. And next week I'm going to show you a little bit about what incense would have looked like, but it's like not exactly a rock, but when it's burned, when you can crush it and burn it, it smells. It sends an aroma up into the air, and a small little plume of smoke would be going up, and that was to go before God, all right, as an offering to God. Now we get beyond this veil, but before we do, this picture I know is hard to see a little bit, so I'm going to skip over that one just because it's hard to see. We're going to use this one. Okay, so you see this lampstand, which was very tall, is over here. On this side is your table where the bread was, and this is a curtain, and that is where the altar of incense would have been. Now imagine the only light inside this tent or this tabernacle comes from this lamp, this stand here, but it's kept burning day and night. But why would that be enough light for this? Well, because think about the walls. What were they? Gold, and gold is shiny, isn't it? And so that light would have reflected off of this wall and this wall, and so it would have just lit the whole place up. Now this wall is not gold, right? Because it is, this one right here is just a curtain. Only the high priest. Now in a few weeks we're going to talk about the priests and the difference between a regular priest and the high priest. We're going to talk about that, but only the high priest could go beyond this veil right here. I will show you one picture. Maybe you can see a little bit just to see, imagine what it might have been. Look at that. Do you see how shiny it's reflecting? The light's reflecting off of that, isn't it? Wouldn't that have been amazing to be in there? And you see how intricate? That's the candlestick or the lampstand. Look at that. With buds and blossoms on it, carved out. You see why those men had to be so good at what they did, right? This would be the bread on the table of presence, or the table of showbread. It was replaced once a week, but it was made fresh once a week and put in there to go before God. All right, and this would have been the altar of incense right before that veiled curtain, if you can see that. And that incense, see that smoke coming up from there a little bit? It would have burned before the Lord. All right, and remember when we were talking about Zacharias, when God came to Zacharias to tell him he was going to have a son. Remember what his duty was that day? He was going inside the temple, not the tabernacle, and burning incense. That was his job. All right, now we'll go beyond, which no one could do but the high priest, but we're going to go beyond this beautiful veil that separates the holy place from the most holy place. So we're gonna go in there, okay? And this would be what we would see. The back wall and the sides would have been gold, and look at that. That is the Ark of the Covenant. And that is where God would come down and meet with the high priest. And that is where the high priest would go. You know how often he could go in that most holy place? One time a year only. Only once a year. The top of the ark had two cherubim whose wings met at the tips, and they were facing one another. And God said he met at the mercy seat, or right in between those cherubim, to listen to the prayers that the high priest gave for the people, for the children of Israel. That's pretty amazing, huh? All right, inside. inside that Ark of the Covenant, God said, I want 3 things to go in there, and they must stay in there. They were precious things that had a meaning for the people. What do you think the first one might have been? That's right. The stone tablets with the 10 Commandments. They went inside the Ark of the Covenant, and that's where they stayed because God's finger had written on them, hadn't it? And the other 2 things, one would have been, do you remember when God was giving, and still is in our story, gave them the manna every morning? Every morning, the manna. Do you remember that he said to Aaron to take 1 omer, which was a quart of that manna, and save it? And that's what they did. And they put that manna in a gold container right here. And it stayed in there. There's the 10 Commandments right here. And then there's something else that goes in there, and that's Aaron's staff or his rod that budded. We haven't had that story yet, but we will. And when God came down, look at the glory. Look at his glory. Look at his presence. It looks like fire, doesn't it? Probably similar to what Moses saw in that burning bush, right? Or what the people saw when God came down on the mountain, Mount Sinai. They saw that, didn't they? Amazing. All right, so here's another picture of what someone thinks it might have looked like. And so, but who would have ever known what it looked like? Only 2 people, Moses, at first, and the high priest, and then over the years, only the high priest would have known that. And all of the furniture was made with gold rings on the furniture and poles that were overlaid with gold, and that's how it would be carried. Because remember, everything, including the walls, everything had to be taken down and carried. And it took over 3,000 men to carry everything for the tabernacle. You know, it's said that when the people brought their gold and their silver, I need to look it up again so I can tell you exactly, but I believe it was a ton of gold, a ton. I'm not just saying a lot, a ton of gold. I'm saying really a ton of gold. And up to 3 tons of the bronze and silver. Can you imagine? So it's very, very heavy. Yes, it can be carried around, but very heavy too, right? All right, so that is the first we're going to talk about with the tabernacle. And I'll go into a little bit. I can tell you one thing that I didn't bring up to you was how long and everything it was. Let me see if I get a good picture here. All right, I think I have a picture in here. Hold on, Miss Carol's working on it, trying to figure out what you can see. Uh-oh. Okay, I want to show you this one though, for real, because this would have been Mount Sinai. There would be the tabernacle. There's the cloud, the pillar. And look at those tents. Can you imagine? But how many people did we say there probably was? Maybe 2 million people. So look at all of that. Incredible to think that was the view that they had. All right, now let me see quickly if I can find a picture of the courtyard of the tabernacle, and I will show you that it was 150 feet long, 75 feet wide. That would be about half of a football field, if you can imagine. So it was about half as long as a football field and 75 feet wide. But the tabernacle itself was not that big. In fact, the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant was just a square, 15 feet wide, 15 feet tall, and, well, all the sides were 15 feet, and 15 feet high, wide, long, just a square. The rest of it was 15 feet, and that's the width of the entire tabernacle's 15 feet. But this part was 45 feet. Okay, and then there was just this little piece here, 15 by 15 in the back, was the most holy place. Okay, a lot to take in, isn't it? But it's very important that we know God, all of these little details were important to God. And he wanted them to follow everything exactly. All right, and just think, if he took all this much care in how he wanted that tabernacle built, and later on when he built the temple, which was a permanent building, think how much care he's taken in heaven, preparing a place for us. That's exciting, isn't it? All right. Okay, so I do hope you're working on these. All right, so we need to get busy with these 10 commandments. Send a video. That's all you have to do, send a video. And we'll get you your awards, okay? All right, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. Have a good week. Put into practice some of these 10 commandments this week. Yeah, be kind. Don't hurt anybody, right? Be sweet. Don't tell lies. Obey your parents. Obey your teachers. You know, be kind. Be a friend. Be the best that you can be this week. We love you. Bye-bye.